Ladies and gentlemen, Rise of Kingdoms finally revealed the two brand new legendary archer commanders. We have Alp Arslan, probably mispronouncing that, as well as Hayam Wuruk. Oh god, I'm so sorry. So let's take a look at the skills and see how busted they actually are or not. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I am a sponsored partner creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, drop a thumbs up down below. It really helps out the channel a ton. Okay, let's jump right in here, and we're gonna start with Alp because this is the archer versatility and skill commander, which means this is the open field archer landing in the game very soon. Now, I will say at the time of recording this, we don't actually know when these commanders are landing in Rise of Kingdoms. If that changes throughout the course of me recording this, I will talk about it later in the video because of course this is breaking news. But anyway, taking a look at the active skill Heroic Lion, it says it is a single target damage skill with a rage requirement of 1000, deals direct damage to the target troop with a damage factor of 2000. This commander's troop also gains the Lion Soul effect for 10 seconds, inflicts 1 stack of pierce on the target troop every 3 seconds. Pierced targets take additional damage every second for 5 seconds with a damage factor of 100. This effect can stack up to 3 times and its duration resets whenever it gains another stack. Okay, so out of the gate the damage factor is very low. I mean, 2000 damage factor is not something that can compete in today's meta for a single target damage commander, so the rest of the kit here has to be really good if this is going to be a contender at all. Almost certainly this is going to be a secondary commander. I haven't looked at the rest of the skills, but I mean there's just really no way around that unless something else on the kit says otherwise. But here's the thing that I like about the pierced debuff here, and I said debuff because it says it inflicts 1 stack of pierce on the target, so it's not actually a damage over time like you would expect from somebody like Sargon, for example. It's just that when you hit them with Lion Soul effect, they automatically gain 1 stack of pierce and they're going to take additional damage every second for 5 seconds whether you stay connected to them or not, right? Or unless they cleanse that debuff somehow. But just by connecting with them with Lion Soul effect, it's a guaranteed 500 damage unless they go back to their city or again they cleanse this somehow. So this is technically guaranteed 2500 damage factor even if you only hit them 1 time during the 10 seconds of Lion Soul effect. Okay, now the other thing we have to keep in mind here is that because this is a 10-second buff to your own army, that means that you're gonna have this up all the time, right? Like your skill cycle, no matter who you pair this with, is almost certainly going to be between 5 and 8 or 9 seconds at the worst. So you're always going to have the Lion Soul effect unless you're out of combat for a while, but as soon as you cast this active skill again, you will gain it back and it will probably stay up for the rest of the battle. Now if you stick to that target, okay, then you are able to stack this multiple times, but you can only inflict it once every 3 seconds, so you really have to stay on them in order to give them another stack of this. Okay, and this can stack up to 3 times and its duration resets, so you could be dealing upwards of an extra 1500 damage factor, which is a total of 3500 from this skill. It's just that it's a slow burn over time, but again it's not really a damage over time because it is guaranteed to happen. It just doesn't happen all at once. So all that being said, really interesting skill and surprisingly strong considering at first glance it looks really bad. Like it looks really bad, but it is actually one of the strongest single target damage skills in the entire game already. But let's move on to the rest of his kit here. It says this is the second skill. It says if this commander is in a field troop, their archer units gain 25% health and 15% attack. That's very good. 40% of stats already is phenomenal. For the first 10 seconds after entering combat, basic attacks have a 50% chance to inflict 1 stack of pierce with a cooldown of 5 seconds. Okay, so this is ramping up very quickly. This is basically like a bleed build where as long as you stay stuck to the same target, you are just going to chip them down over time. And again, with these stacks of pierce, they are debuffs to the target, not something that requires you stay connected at all times, right? The other cool thing is that this does not require you have the Lion Soul effect in order to inflict stacks of pierced to the target. Okay, Lion Soul is guaranteed stacks of pierce at least once every 3 seconds, whereas with this skill it says the first 10 seconds after entering combat combat, you have a 50% chance of inflicting a stack of pierce. Okay, so really nice stuff here. Unfortunately, 10 seconds, I mean, that's kind of like Hua, right? Like where the benefit, the big benefit that he gets is only at the beginning of combat, and then it falls off, right? Especially with a 5-second cooldown, you are going to inflict this at most 2 times. At worst, you could get really unlucky and not inflict it at all. But anyway, we're not done with the skill. It says the troop gains a 10% bonus to healing received and 25% march speed. Okay, so the way I'm looking at this skill is that the bonus pierce damage that you're dealing here is just the sprinkles on top. This is just the icing on the cake, right? Because the rest of the skill is everything that archers want and need, right? It's not just health, it's health and attack, which we really like to see for archers. A majority of it is health and 25% march speed, which is insanely good for archers. You absolutely need that on archers, non-negotiable, no question, right? So really good stats on the second skill. The third skill looks like we're going to need a PhD in rockology because this is a novella. Okay. Whew. Okay, two-headed eagle. For every 5 instances of debuffs it inflicts, this commander's troop gains the benevolence effect for 10 seconds. Basic attacks have a 50% chance to select up to 3 non-target enemy troops centered around the target troop. These non-target troops receive 2 debuffs inflicted on the target troop by this commander, including pierce, poison, slow, and normal debuffs other than additional damage cooldown of 4 seconds. Okay, so let me just understand this before we keep going. It says for every 5 instances of debuffs it inflicts. Okay, now it does not specify that it has to be from Alp himself. It seems like debuffs from other commanders that you are paired with, that he is paired with, will also apply here. So other commanders that are inflicting debuffs. Okay, now when I think of what archers are inflicting debuffs, well, immediately you think of Zhuge Liang, right? I mean, his active skill inflicts debuffs to 5 targets in a circle, right? Same thing with Hermann Prime. His active skill inflicts poison stacks, that's debuffs, to up to 3 targets with the active skill. Any instant proc inflicts poison debuffs as well. And then on top of that, Alp himself is also inflicting debuffs with the Lion Soul effect, the pierce here, and the pierce on the second skill. So there's a lot of ways to inflict debuffs. Okay, and once that debuff counter hits 5, then you gain the benevolence effect for yourself, and your basic attacks have a 50% chance to apply 2 debuffs to up to 3 non-target troops. Okay, and the 2 debuffs that you're dealing to the 3 non-target enemies are whatever debuffs are on the current target. Okay, so if you've inflicted pierce to that target, if you've inflicted poison to that target, if you've inflicted slow or normal debuffs, 2 of those debuffs will immediately be spread to 3 nearby non-target enemies, right? So this can get out of hand very quickly. You're gonna spread pierce and poison like an absolute demon, and in fact I kind of feel like poison is the better choice here for pairing, just because pierce and poison are probably the best debuffs to apply here, right? I mean, normal debuffs are just ones that reduce the target's health, attack, defense, or healing received, right? So actually, if we look at this, the debuff that is applied by Zhuge Liang's active skill is not one that the non-target troops could receive from the benevolence effect. Okay, it looks like you can only spread pierce, poison, slow, and normal debuffs. Okay, so this actually looks like we may be looking at a Hermann Prime primary, Alp secondary. That's kind of my knee-jerk reaction right now, which is kind of insane. But I mean, it looks like you're gaining a lot of benefit from spreading as many debuffs as possible. Now the rest of the skill says for every 5 instances of buffs it provides, this commander's troop gains the malevolence effect for 10 seconds, which says you have a 50% chance to heal a percentage of slightly wounded units when dealing direct damage or true damage equal to 20% of its damage factor, cooldown 3 seconds. Okay, so this is regular healing factor. This is not the same sort of healing that we see on Gangnam Chan, it seems like, which is unfortunate. It's also not even mighty healing. It's just regular healing that is equal to 20% of the damage factor, right? It's a 3-second cooldown. Okay, and it only occurs during the malevolence buff window. I guess this has synergy with Shajar, right? Because her expertise provides buffs to nearby allies, so maybe that's what they're going for here. But frankly, I'm struggling to see that pairing being the best pairing, but let's continue on here. It says Parthian shot. When this commander is in a field troop, when using an active skill, this commander's troop deals direct damage to the target troop of damage factor equal to number of debuffs on the target times 100 for a maximum damage of 1,000. When this commander's troop deals skill damage, it has a 50% chance to take 10% less damage for 3 seconds. Okay, so we know that the pierce effect can be stacked up to 3 times at maximum, right? No matter how they get those stacks, whether it's the active skill or the second skill here. We also know that you can spread other debuffs, not just pierce but poison and slow, with the third skill. And then this skill says that it will take into account up to 10 debuffs for the 1000 damage factor here, right? So it's 100 times number of debuffs. We know you can only have 3 pierce, so you would need 7 debuffs from other, areas such as poison, for example. And poison can stack up to 15 times, by the way, right? So it wouldn't be unreasonable that the target would have more than 10 debuffs on them at any given time if you're pairing this with somebody like Hermann Prime, for example. Okay, let's take a look at the expertise. It says when this commander's troop inflicts a debuff, inflicted targets lose 5% defense for 5 seconds. This effect can stack up to 2 times, and its duration resets whenever it gains another stack. It can be triggered up to 3 times per second, and each target troop can trigger the effect up to 1 time per second, cooldown 1 second. Okay, so now you're spreading defense reductions. This is a normal debuff, which we've discussed already. It further says when this commander's troop provides healing or buffs, healed or buff targets gain 2% defense for 5 seconds. This can stack up to 5 times, and its duration resets whenever it gains another stack and can be triggered up to 3 times per second, and each target troop can trigger. Okay, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I know why this commander took so long to reveal. This is another example of you need a PhD in rockology. These skills are way too long. They are way too complicated. If I were a new player, I would probably have to go lay down right now and I would have to come back to the game in a few hours and just really digest what I'm reading here. Okay, this is one of the most complicated commanders in the game, and that's saying a lot considering Emperor Qin is in the game as well. Okay, there's lots of conditional things that are happening here, but there's so many conditional things that are all happening in tandem that I actually do think the total output here is going to be insane. My knee-jerk reaction, and we'll talk about best pairs, but my knee-jerk reaction is this is a Hermann Prime primary, Alp Arslan secondary. That's what I'm thinking here. The skill tree obviously would be better, but the support tree is incredibly tanky with Hermann Prime. That also frees up your Zhuge Liang to be secondary to your Emperor Qin, or he just takes the bench. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. Almost certainly you will not be pairing this with Emperor Qin because Emperor Qin doesn't do any buffs or debuffs. He is all about raw damage, right? I could be wrong about that. Of course, we'll have to wait and see for testing, but there's just nothing about his kit that screams, oh my god, this is Emperor Qin's like match made in heaven, right? I think Emperor Qin already has his matches made in heaven, and that's just gonna stay how it is. I think Emperor Qin is dealing massive AoE damage and chipping down everybody around them, whereas Alp is dealing massive single target damage. I mean, absolutely, like not even from just the active skill here, but also from the 4th skill, dealing upwards of another 1000 damage factor and just chipping them away with pierce damage. I mean, he is going to melt down a single target, absolutely, but there's just not much synergy with Emperor Qin from what I can tell. Okay, now we'll talk more about him in just a second, but first let's talk about Hayam Wuruk. Okay, this is the garrison commander who is looking very cool. Active skill is single target damage with a rage requirement of 1000, and it says deals direct damage to the target troop, damage factor 2500, and reduces its attack by 10% for 3 seconds, gains the devourer effect for 10 seconds, heals a percentage of slightly wounded units when dealing direct damage or true damage equal to 10% of its damage factor. So another healing here on the active skill, slight debuff to the target. Second skill says this commander's archer units gain 30% attack, 10% health. When this commander's troop contains only archer units, it takes 10% less smite damage. Okay, so 40% of stats, no march speed on the second skill. Third skill says if this commander is serving as a garrison commander, their troop gains a 10% bonus to heal and shield effects. When their troop receives smite damage, it has a 50% chance to reduce the attacker's rage gain speed by 20% for 2 seconds. If this commander is garrisoned in a stronghold, for every 10% of garrison units lost, lands 1 debuff and deal 5% more damage for 10 seconds up to a maximum of 15%. Fourth skill says if this commander is serving as a garrison commander, they gain 10% defense, and for every 2 instances of basic attack / counterattack damage dealt, this commander's troop immediately deals direct damage to the target troop or attacker, damage factor 200. This effect can trigger up to 6 times per second with a 4-second cooldown. So this is just anti-swarm, right? I mean, that's dealing counterattacks triggers this, okay? And then the expertise says deals 5% more skill damage and true damage when inflicted with a control effect. This commander's troop negates the effect and deals 50% more counterattack damage for 3 seconds with a 3-second cooldown. Insane bonus to counterattack damage there, okay? All in all, I mean, this looks like a Choi-Young pairing, right? I'm not a garrison leader, I'm not an archer main, so I can't say for sure, but to me this seems like a Choi-Young pairing. You guys can let me know in the comment section below what you think about this. There's nothing that's jumping out at me as like, oh my god, this is insane, but clearly this is countering infantry rallies. I mean, what are we talking about? That is obviously what they're looking to do here, and frankly I don't have that much else to say about Hayam. I mean, in terms of open field usage, I don't really think that there's going to be much of that because the third and fourth skills are exclusive to the garrison and you don't have any march speed, right? So, and it's single target damage, right? So like, what are we talking about? There's just no way in the current meta that this is going to be a commander that is actually used in the open field. There's just no reason to do that. There's so many better options for archers right now in the open field. So really, Alp is the only new thing we're getting for open field right now. So let's jump into the game and try and figure out what the best pairings would be for Alp. Like I said, Emperor Chin does not have any debuffs to the target. He drains their rage, right? But that is not anything considered in the skill of Alp where he talks about spreading the debuffs, right? It's only counting pierce, poison, slow, and normal debuffs. None of those are actually related to rage drain, okay? So I'm really not thinking Emperor Chin is the pair here. I think Emperor Chin is great with YSG. He's great with Zhuge Liang. You don't have to think about that. I think, you know, and also I will say that if you only run one archer pairing, I actually don't think that this new commander is going to change that. I think you're still going to want to run Emperor Chin with Zhuge Liang or with YSG. That is of course my knee-jerk reaction. Wait for there to be testing when he comes into the game. When it comes to a 2 archer pairing, I think Alp is almost certainly going to find himself there alongside somebody like Herman or Zhuge Liang. Now the thing here is the damage reduction debuff here is not considered a normal debuff from what I can tell. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think that it actually is, okay? Then we look at the rest of the kit and I'm not seeing anything here that applies more debuffs to the target. You're gaining the marquee effect. You also are boosting your rage gain here. You have a chance of gaining attack, so you're buffing yourself, but you don't really have any other debuffs besides that damage reduction, which is a very strong debuff. But what you're looking for with Alp is number of debuffs. You want to apply a ton of debuffs with him so that way you can deal as much damage with that fourth skill as possible, and so you can spread those debuffs to more targets automatically, right? That's what you want with Alp. And so for me, I'm thinking Herman Prime is the play here because you're guaranteed to deal 2 stacks of poison with every active skill cast. It stacks up to 15 times. You also have 15% march speed here, which is a little low, but remember Alp has 25%, so it averages out to plus 40% total, which is what we expect from the current meta. The only downside here is that Herman Prime only gives you AoE skill damage bonus, not regular skill damage bonus, so you actually won't get this bonus for Alp's active skill, which is unfortunate. But your current target loses 20% defense when an active skill is used for 2 seconds, and the fourth skill says you have a 10% chance to deal extra damage to 3 targets, damage factor of 200, and inflict them with 2 stacks of poison, and you also gain extra casts of the active skill here. Now whenever this commander's troop inflicts 25 stacks of poison, you trigger your active skill again. Well, great news, you're going to be inflicting even more poison with this spread from Two-Headed Eagle here. 3 non-target enemies are going to get 2 more debuffs, right? So if some of those debuffs that you're applying is poison, then that's 3 more poison stacks every time this triggers, which just increases the speed with which you're going to get that expertise from Herman Prime. So he's going to be casting his active skill even more than he was before. So for me, that seems like the pairing that they're pushing us towards. On top of that, it looks like there's a little bit of synergy with somebody like Shajar, right? I mean, Shajar she's got the healing, she's got the true damage, she's got the debuff on the active skill here, right? And she also has the buff spreading on the expertise here. But to me, it kind of seems like an afterthought. It feels like, you know, the second half of this skill they just added for Shajar. It looks like the second half of the expertise. They just added for Shajar. Really, it's kind of like they feel bad that they're not supporting Shajar as much, so I feel like they just threw that in here, but who knows, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to test these out. We'll have to test this commander pairing to see how well it does, but really my money is on Hermann Prime. But you guys can let me know in the comment section below what you think of Alp and what you think his best pairings are. Let me know what you think about Hayam as well. I am not an archer garrison leader, so I don't have many thoughts here other than, you know, the obvious pairing is obvious. And while you're down there, don't forget to drop a thumbs up on the video. It really does help out the channel a ton. It helps get this video out into the YouTube algorithm so other Rise of Kingdoms players might see it, and consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload breaking news for Rise of Kingdoms. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.